Wednesday afternoon, the 19th of May, 2021. And we are, I'm going to go with God on this one, guys. I got to be honest with you. This is a little bit crazy. This is going to be the first time I might be going live with a guest. I have been trying some things here that we tested, but we'll see. Like I said, I'm going to go with God. So welcome to the stream, my regular Wednesday afternoon stream. If you were tuning in this week, you probably saw me on Monday and Tuesday doing some extra streaming. I got the streaming bug, everybody. That's what it is. And now I want to try to do something a lot different. So one of the things I wanted to do with this program was attempt to have on guests and try to have people on who I respected and enjoyed and loved having here, and that's what we're going to do. So I call this segment "Talking Art." We'll see if any of the graphics that I made load, but I'm going to introduce our guest for today, and let's cross fingers that this works. His name is Lartist on Instagram. Uncle Lar on Instagram. His name is Lartist on social media on Twitter. And if you don't know him, he goes by Lars deSouza. And he is pretty amazing. So let's switching over to Talking Art. There you see him there working diligently. This is how you're going to see him. Lars, so show your beautiful face. Let's take a look and see how you're doing. Can we hear you? Can we hear you?
I hope so. I turned off I unmuted.
Yes, we can hear you. Okay. Perfect. Oh my gosh, this is working, Lar. Can you believe it? Our prayers to Saint Isidore have come through. And we are live. Yes. So
we're tight.
yes. It's so funny you should bring him up. You might actually know this. So my son Christian, who might actually be watching right now, his middle name is Isidore, and he's named after Saint Isidore. Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yes, it was. He was
in the great crash of '96. I looked up who the saint of the internet computers were.
Yes.
And ever since then, I named each of my computers Isidore.
That's so funny. No, that's the reason why my wife chose that middle name, because at the time I was starting my business, we really needed as many prayers as possible.
Absolutely.
So he was the patron saint of the internet. For those of you who don't know, Saint Isidore is the patron saint of the internet, and a lot of people may giggle and laugh about that, but it's true, man. And here we are. We said a little prayer to Saint Isidore before, and here he is. So Lars deSouza is here joining me today, and one of the things that I wanted to try to do, like I mentioned, is just bring on artists that I respect and I love their work. And Lar is definitely one of those people. Lar is if you have to go visit him on Instagram, because he just posted something last night, which I just instantly blew my mind. I'm like, oh my gosh, why didn't anybody else think of that? You've been doing some images of the banana splits lately.
Yeah, I don't know why, but they came back into my consciousness.
Right.
And so now I just kind of have to get them out of my system. That's how I,
right.
I keep an idea file where I write down these things, but
yeah,
it's more than I will ever get to in a lifetime, I'm sure. Some I go back and look at and kind of go, I don't know why I thought that was funny, or this is no longer timely.
Well, I got to tell you, I love them because I'm a big fan of the banana splits. And so it's a mashup. I don't know if I ever explained this. It's a mashup of the banana splits and Kiss.
Should I bring it up?
Yeah, go ahead, bring it up. While you can do it, because I'm afraid if I try to do it, I'm gonna mess things up. There it is. Oh my gosh, this is genius, and this is the reason why I enjoy looking at Lars stuff all the time. Lars, and I put you in a an area, like in a category of artists who I really admire, but also make me super angry.
I understand entirely what you mean. And I am very flattered and honored to be
no, every time I see your stuff, I'm like, oh man, why didn't I think of that? That's so classic.
I think that when I have like an idea like that, like Kiss and Banana Splits, I think to myself, why haven't I drawn that?
Why hasn't anybody drawn that? Right?
Why is it? Sometimes I have to Google, and yes, somebody has done it. And sometimes if it's done well, it's like, okay, I don't need to do this. And sometimes it's like, I want to do it my way.
Yeah, so like explain that process. Like I know you still are a Twitch streamer and have been for a long time. So a lot of your ideas, some of your ideas come from the stream where you have people kind of sitting and watching you, and some of that comes.
Sometimes people suggest things. I don't generally. A friend once described it, and I think this is I don't appear to have any filters. That's also between my brain and my mouth, unfortunately. But it's just like things go in, and they bounce around, and sometimes they stick in unusual ways. I mean, that other Banana Split one, To Me My Banana Splits with the Charles Xavier.
Yeah, right.
It was a falling asleep idea. Where it's like I'm falling asleep and I have to rouse myself enough to grab my phone, enter it into my little notepad. And then the next day I sort of like, oh, I forgot about that. I gotta draw that. That's still
yeah. Well, you also seem to like have a really good grasp on just pop culture and like glomming on or grabbing onto ideas that are pop culture and mashing them together, which I love. It's just
an ill-spent youth worshiping television on Saturday mornings, right, Len? I mean, it is. It's something I wonder about because pop culture has changed with the demise of cable, and both with the rise of cable and demise of cable. When you have 300 channels, you don't have those shared events.
Yeah.
Like everybody watching the show on, everybody watched Love Boat and Fantasy Island on Saturday nights.
Yeah, right.
And had those family stories of the family watching. You had one television, so everybody watched the same thing. If Dad's watching golf on Sunday, you're watching golf on Sunday.
Yeah.
Parking off and doing something else. So, a lot of these ideas are old.
Yeah.
I'm an old.
Yeah.
I mean, it's in a funny way. I think like that Kiss cartoon is more like it's not only that they're Kiss, but it's that I used. Remember they did the solo albums where they had the colors on them, the little color rim light. And it's like I'm drawing on that.
Yes.
As much as a Banana Split. So it's like if you're a Kiss person, you get that.
Right. And that brings in another aspect of your art that I'm always a big admirer of, is your innate sense of graphic design. So I am a graphic design teacher. I teach graphic design for a living, and one of the things that I love about your stuff is how you're able to kind of drill in and once again grab some of those graphic design notes, not only fonts, but like you said, colors and design. And that's the thing, the Kiss image itself is a pretty interesting one, only because it's not an exact copy of what the Kiss albums, the solo albums were. However, it's enough, right? The colors, and the fact that you put them all onto one as well. The only thing that would have been more perfect is if you would have matched the font for whatever they were called.
Yeah, I didn't, because those albums didn't have it.
Did they? Did they not have? They didn't have names. I know they didn't have names.
Faces.
Yeah.
They probably had the font on the back. Good designer. I think I can do a good composition. but there are elements to graphic design, especially when it comes in terms of typography.
Yeah.
It's one thing to go and find the original font, and I think it works because the graphic designer who designed that font did all the heavy lifting for me.
Right.
You know, so I'm standing on my shoulders.
But you know what? Oh no, go ahead. I don't want to interrupt, but I have something to say about that.
And I think too, like, I mean, I love. It's a habit. I don't know if I should say the habit I want to break or that I should try. There's something about nailing the style. It's like you can get close, and it's still funny, but if you get it, you know, the closer you can get,
right,
it gets more and more. Just that accuracy of the visual language.
Sure, right. It's almost like the like Faces, Uncanny Valley. Like if you don't hit it right, it doesn't land, and I think that's part of it.
Oh, I get it. And they don't necessarily have to know. It's like, oh, there's something off about it, but I don't know what. I can't articulate because you didn't nail it, because the font is wrong, because the composition is wrong, because the likeness is off. It's like, oh, I can see you were trying to draw such and such.
Yeah.
I understand it. Chuckle, chuckle. Versus they nailed it, and you get that instant, you know, connects with that brain memory of, I can hear the theme song, I can hear the other theme song. You know, I can hear Kiss and I can hear Tra La La. And it's like, oh my god, and it sets up that buzz.
I'm being told that my audio is low, so let me see. Hang on a second. I don't know why. Oh, you know why? Let me try this. I hate to harsh the buzz here, but you know, technical aspects here and everything else. Anyway, what I was saying about graphic design. So I am a self-proclaimed font snob, and you know, my wife calls me that. You know, Nora, she's like, you know, you are just such a font snob, and I think you know, when I'm teaching my students about typography, it's almost like, why don't you know what's so hard to understand about it? Because just like you, I feel you even kind of mentioned it. From, you know, you borrowed ideas from your childhood, from your pop culture upbringing, right? So the fact that you were, you know, all of us were exposed to graphic design from a very young age. It feels almost like all it is sort of parodying, kind of, or rather not parodying, but parroting the design that you grew up with. And I think you do a really, really good job with that.
I think it is very, I mean, you're correct. I wouldn't say I'm a font snob, but I've had those moments. It's like being a wine snob. It's sort of, there are nuances. And it's like, no, I don't want just any old sans serif. I want a weight. I want a balance of line
right.
weights. You know, I'm not sure where I learned that.
Oh, it's, you know,
I studied illustration in the pre-computer days, and we didn't do a lot of font work because it was illustration, not graphic design.
Yeah.
So we had a very small amount of fonts to choose from. But when it came up, you know, you better have gotten it right. And there's definitely, if you look at, you know, if you look at the era of television, if you look at the fonts of the 50s, the fonts of the 60s, like movie posters, books, television cards, there's a flavor.
Yeah.
There's
right.
A whatever. And if you want to evoke that era, I mean, that 1970s harsh Kiss
right.
font.
Yeah.
And then the banana splits from the 60s, or, you know, late 60s, early 70s, which still had that loopy, goofy, liquidy bell bottoms,
bright colors, super bright colors.
Bright colors, and Kiss is all black and metallics.
Well,
you know,
not
the co-
not only that, Lar, but I think one of the things that you also nail is you nail the art impeccably. Had you not gotten the exact look of the banana splits, there would be that disconnect again. Once again, like, what is he trying to get at? But you nailed it. That's what I love about it. And you seem to do that with all your work, too.
it wouldn't have necessarily worked the other way, because if I had drawn, I mean, okay, Kiss did help save Scooby and the gang from whatever,
Right.
but the Hanna-Barbera Scooby, you know, Kiss designs, if I drew them in banana split costumes, it would be unrecognizable because it'd be four guys with big hair,
Yeah, right.
you know. So
That's true.
It's
That's true.
kind of getting. I mean, the mask art certainly translates because the cartoon faces are so iconic in that particular case.
So let me ask you something. Have you ever taught at any level before?
I did teach one semester at a boutique college in Toronto. They had me. It was, when was it? It was in the mid 2000s,
Mm-hmm.
and I had Maximut Animation in Toronto, and I knew a couple of the. I'd met a couple of the teachers who were just kind of Toronto artists, and they invited me because they wanted someone to teach inking in Photoshop,
Mm-hmm.
and this was actually by the end of that semester I had switched my inking to Manga Studio 4. I got a copy of Manga Studio, and it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed. I enjoyed the students. The administration was a different issue. They were all very, very talented artists.
Mm-hmm.
They were not all very good business people, and so there were issues with, like, you know, the first week I got in there and there weren't enough tablets for everyone, because students would come and borrow tablets from one classroom to another, and so there were like pens missing and
Right.
things broken. It's just like, this is untenable. I realize I'm nobody here, but if I have to teach this,
Right.
I can't.
Right.
The students can't do it. It was, yeah, there was a lot of kind of fly by the seat of the pants things, but I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it very much, and I think my students enjoyed it. And it's something that, if it weren't driving to Toronto such a nightmare, but they only had me for the one semester, and that was fine.
Well, the reason I ask is because you seem to have the right demeanor to be a teacher, to be, like, you know, and the other thing too is just the wealth of knowledge that you could probably give to a student, like an illustration student, is fantastic.
That is very kind. It may just be because I love to talk.
Well, no, but you know, here's
you know, I have been doing Twitch, so I'm always happy on my Twitch to sort of pause, and it's very easy to get me to pause and sort of demo something.
answer questions, right?
You know, if it's you know, a lot of it is often like, how do I do this in Clip Studio?
Mm-hmm,
And but sometimes it's like, how do I, you know, I'm having trouble drawing X, and it's like, well, then let's talk about drawing a horse or hair or, you know, grapefruit.
Well, you know, and I have something to say about that too as well. The only reason why I say you probably would be a good teacher is because I didn't think I'd be a good teacher either. Like when they asked me to teach graphic design, I'm like, I don't know anything about graphic design. And then when I sat in the classroom and talked to these students, I realized, oh, I do have a lot to say.
You do, yeah.
And it's, you know, I have a lot of knowledge that I didn't know that I had. So it was sort of like recognizing that you had a superpower. So it's pretty cool to see.
Well, I mean, it's just like, I mean, you asking me about the Kiss Banana Splits cartoon, you know, I don't know how much of that was conscious.
Mm-hmm.
How much of that is just riding a bicycle innately.
Yeah.
And doing it for so long, you make these choices.
Yes.
And it isn't until somebody says, why did you put that there? And you kind of go, oh, well, it was over here and I had a tangent, or it was creating an awkward space, and then I realized I should just juggle the composition until, you know, those things feel right. Those negative spaces, those weights, those, you know, and I certainly believe teaching is a great way to improve yourself, because you have to learn to articulate the thought process, as opposed to saying I do it just because. You know, that's not an answer.
Right. You need to be able to defend your work, regardless of what you do creatively.
It was part of the critique process in college to say, not just why something didn't work, but why something did work.
Sure.
And I like to say that to people too, is like, understand if you like something, why do you like it? Because if you can understand why you like it, then you can learn from that to try and remember to incorporate that into your own tool set in your own way.
I totally get it. Now, speaking of tool sets, you had mentioned on your stream you like talking about talking shop, and that's one of the things I wanted to try to do. So take me through your setup. What are you using? How are you using the draw? How do you creating this wonderful stuff?
Well, I have a Windows 10 currently, Windows 10 box. I have a Cintiq 24, which is a fairly new baby.
Is that new?
Cintiq 21 UX for a decade or so. Absolute workhorse, but the office just recently upgraded me because I needed it. I have 3 monitors. I guess the Cintiq and 2 others, so I can have a zoomed out view, the scripts, email, references, YouTube, whatever I'll play.
Yeah, so...
But the big deal is I have a Cintiq. I use Clip Studio. I would give them an organ if they needed it. I love this program for illustration. It's ideal for illustration. It's ideal for comic work.
Why Clip Studio over Photoshop? Any particular reason?
So I did have Photoshop for many years, and there's nothing wrong with Photoshop technically. Photoshop is a photography program, so it has lots and lots of stuff under the hood for photography. And I've seen photographers do things in Photoshop that are just amazing in terms of that sort of temperature correction and photo manipulation. And the fact that artists can draw on it is just lucky for us.
Right.
But the thing is, it's very resource hungry. And
Clip Studio is not?
Clip Studio is not. Clip Studio is made, or Manga Studio when I started, is far less resource hungry. Plus, it has a far superior brush engine. You know, if you just use like a standard 10 round in Photoshop and a standard 10 round in Clip Studio, you can get a more finessed line. And I'm a real line junkie. Clip Studio also allows you to switch over, for those who may not know it. Up here in the file menu, you can go down and it's got pen pressure settings. So after you dial in your pen pressure on your Wacom or whatever dialog box in your control panel, you come into Photoshop or come into Clip Studio and it dials it in further. So you really have that sweet individual, you know, sensitivity.
Interesting.
For yourself. As well as, like I said, for comic stuff, it has just all those extra tools that make the chore, you know, the grunt work of drawing panels and gutters and word balloons and that sort of thing are a snap. They're just a snap. It also has a lot of drawing assist rulers. I don't know if Photoshop has them now, but you know, originally rulers just meant the measurements along the top and the side.
Right.
And now rulers mean, you know, I had physically put rulers and ellipse templates on my screen to draw things before, but now you can draw splines. I'll just put up a concentric ellipse. I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah.
And you put up a spline like that, and your brushes will snap to it.
Oh, that's pretty. You know what? That is something. Now, do you use Procreate at all?
I have it on my iPad. I have used it. I have not used it enough. I tend to use my iPad when I travel. So I do have it on there. It's kind of a funny story. I also belong to ISCA, the International Society of Caricaturists.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You're an incredible caricaturist, too. I forgot to mention that.
A lot of digital artists now, caricaturists, use the iPad and Procreate for their live digital work and for their professional work. And so I went to a few years ago, going to one of the conferences for a week, and it's like, I'm going to dedicate myself to learn Procreate, because all my friends who know Procreate will be there. And midweek, Clip Studio dropped for the iPad. I was like, I need to learn Procreate. I could just download. And so I have Clip Studio, and I know it so well. I do love the experience of drawing in Procreate, though. It's a really nice user interface.
Well, it sounds to me like some of the things in Clip Studio are things that are from Procreate but not in Photoshop. And one of the things that I really love...
Kind of the other way. I think Procreate
borrowed...
had things like perspective rulers, things. They have things that Clip Studio doesn't have, certainly. I love the way they have that ability to, like... if you fill something and then you drag your pen so that you can...
Yes, I love that.
Control.
Yes.
That's just... That is such smart user interface. That's designed for a tablet.
Yeah.
And I really do appreciate that.
See, my big thing is I'm worried that I have to learn... If I were to go to something like Clip Studio, I'm going to have to learn it all over. And, I'm like, you said earlier in the interview, I'm an old. And I'm like, I'm an old. If you're an old, then I must be an old too. And I don't know. I just don't have the patience to learn it.
I think that's it. I mean, like for me, I was happy to start learning Procreate, but then it's like, well, they just handed me what I use. And I could duplicate things. But Clips, Manga Studio had a very different interface, and it wasn't a very good one. Also, it didn't do color. And then when they changed themselves to Clip Studio, which was, if you don't know by now, it was the original name in Japan. It was the North American marketers who changed it to manga, thinking, we'll get all the kids to buy it. And all the kids bought it, and none of the pros did. So they said, okay, it's actually a professional level program. But they upgraded the user interface, and it is very Adobe friendly, Clip Studio.
Okay.
So it's very easy to get productive right away, and there's tons and tons of information. And Doug Hills, who is a fellow illustrator, and he literally wrote the book. I bought the book, Manga Studio for Dummies, and because I got this copy, and it was by him, and it was brilliant. Just demystified the whole thing. He's got a course on everything Clip Studio, but yeah, you can. I mean, in terms of productivity, it's very Adobe friendly, and you can just move over. The shortcut buttons are the same kind of thing, and there's just a couple nuanced things, I think, but give me a call. Show up on my Twitch. I'll give you a quick demo.
I have to.
And get you started. Because they're so much cheaper.
Yes. That is true. That is true.
If you're not a photographer, you don't need... Photoshop has lovely filters. There aren't very many filters in Clip Studio. But I don't miss them.
Yeah.
I have a Gaussian blur. Okay. Like, that's the one I maybe use.
No, I understand where you're going. And I think that's the, Clip Studio and Photoshop, that's what it has above Procreate, is Procreate, I think, is very limited. If you get to like large size print style pieces, of number of layers comes down, you're kind of limited. Which is why I like to use Procreate as sort of like a starter. Like you start doing the work and then throw it up to Photoshop and finish it.
And it really is that kind of experience of whenever I am away, whenever I'm traveling and I do pull up my iPad, and it's like, why don't I do this at home? Why don't I sit on the back deck?
Yeah, right.
And,
Never
and
happens.
do this instead of sitting at my desk. But my desk is, I'm a weeble. I'm just like, I've got a big butt, and you push me over, I come back up, and I'm comfortable. I got the cats, I got the coffee maker, I got,
right,
my things.
Right.
But it really is. It's one of the things that Clip Studio does that other programs really need to pick up on. I think is their differences in layers, layer types.
Mm-hmm.
So you can designate a layer as a sketch layer, which means it's non-printing. So if you've ever accidentally sent something to print and you get those lines, and it's like, oh, I flattened it and I didn't turn off the sketch layer.
Yeah.
If I flatten something with sketch layers, they disappear.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
But it's also handy if I want to have a color palette on the screen for myself. I can make that palette layer of swatches a sketch layer and just lock it. So
okay.
I don't have to. If I lock it, then I don't worry about drawing on it. And you can turn that on and off if you decide you want to print something afterwards. You can designate a layer to be grayscale or 2-bit monochrome. In Photoshop, you're working on a 600 DPI CMYK. Every layer has to be 600 DPI CMYK information. But in Clip Studio, if you say this is a color layer and this is a black and white layer only needs black and white information. And so the memory this takes less space.
Now, I know you're not a Clip Studio salesperson.
Yeah,
what is the cost? What is the cost difference, I guess, between the two?
Oh gosh, I'd have to look it up because it's been a long time since I've had to buy anything. That's the nice thing is that upgrades are just like forever.
Okay.
On the iPad, it's a subscription.
Okay.
But I think even then, it's like $100 a year for the highest version of the program.
Okay.
And so the basic, they used to have 3, and now they have software kind of thing. And then they've got the Pro version, which allows you to do up to 24 frames of animation. Do kind of classic frame by frame animation.
Okay.
And then they've got the X version, which allows you to do unlimited animation if you want, and also includes a story menu, which allows you to it's another function for if you're working on a multi-page document, like for say a comic book, you can have it in a project file so that you can kind of have all the pages thumbnailed. It helps you in terms of that kind of imposition of images. If you're working on spreads and things like that. I have the X version because I got it years ago because I wanted to A, support them, and B, I just wanted everything.
Right.
Because of how my comic work is, the web comics are just one by one. I've never actually used the story function other than just to play with it. But I do know that other comic artists find it useful. But if you're organized in terms of numbering your files, and you're not interested in doing any kind of simple animation, the base version is for you. I'm gonna look that up because it's like
it says
it's like maybe $200.
In the chat room, KT Data says the Clip Studio Paint Pro is $49.99 and Clip Studio Paint X is $219 on Windows and Mac.
Yeah,
so
$50.
Yeah,
$50, and yeah,
it's unbelievably for what it does.
Expensive for an iPad app,
right.
But it's unbelievable.
No, it's
how much is? Now Adobe, you have to have a cloud account.
Yeah, I know.
You can't
It's
physically buy a disc, but even buying it before was hundreds of dollars.
yeah. I am sort of in that ecosystem though,
Yeah.
for where I teach and everything else. And plus, it's like I'm at a point, like I said, I if I have to switch it now, I feel like it might be a little bit harder.
At some point, get the 30-day free trial or the 15-day free trial or whatever it is, and we'll hop on the Zoom together.
do they let you share brushes between Photoshop and Clip Studio? That's would be important because
they didn't before, but I believe the last upgrade they allow you to import Photoshop brushes. I do not know how that process is, because I once upon a time had Photoshop brushes.
Yeah,
but
right.
I couldn't tell you where they
No,
were,
I have
so I don't
so many brushes. It's like that would kill me if I lost some of my
know if there's
brushes.
anything the color palette, you can import them to
Sure.
Studio, and now you can do brushes. I will just say your mileage may vary, because I've not done that. I don't have any photo brushes. I probably do backed up on a DVD somewhere in my archives, but even then, though, I'm not really a natural media kind of person. I bought Rafe brushes. I bought his stuff, and he's got literally hundreds of natural media brushes.
Yeah.
And I play with them all, and then I sort of take them off, because I'm never gonna, I ink and I do kind of cell shading. So for me, it is. And then I have a couple inking brushes, and I have a couple of texture brushes I like. He's got some spatter brushes that I really like, and I've got the basic airbrush and some soft brushes. So I don't need a lot of variety. For me, what I really like to do is
to speed up the process, right?
They're more like, I can't remember which program it was. There's a program that called them hose pipes.
Okay.
And that's what I really love doing. It's really easy to make a novelty brush like this, where I can just, I needed a bunch of cards flying around, so I made a brush to save me that, and well, I mean,
how often do you use that though, Lar? Really, the cards?
It comes back. The thing is, even if I use it just for the one illustration, it saves me time.
I guess you're right about that.
It's sort of like, sometimes it's just easier to make this brush, and then sometimes, like, I've made an autumn leaf brush for background stuff. So yeah, I've used that sometimes, and it's just a case of adding the kind of density to an illustration.
Yeah.
That makes it easier. You can also save things, so especially for backgrounds, or sort of accessory things. You can draw something and then save it in the library, in your own personal library. And we recently I did a strip with a piano in it, and it's like, I'm not drawing this dang piano for 2 weeks, so I drew the piano in kind of a couple different states really well, and then saved it to my library.
Oh, interesting.
And so you can draw something maybe from, recently had a thing with shopping carts, and it's just like, I hate shopping carts, because if you do them wrong, it's one of those things,
they'll look crappy.
So I spent so long drawing these damn shopping carts, so that I never have to draw them again. And I've got them, they're not just flat, I've got them in pieces, so that I can break them up and reassemble them.
Oh my gosh. You see, this is why I love talking to other artists, because and the struggle, right? The struggle is that you work by yourself, you're just in your own world by yourself, and you only have yourself to listen to. And when I see how other artists are working, I'm like, oh my gosh, why didn't I think of that? Why didn't I come up with that? It has to be someone showing me and having someone understand it.
It's one of the reasons why I love copying styles, is because it helps me, looking at another style and trying to nail that style helps me understand what I like most about the style, but also helps me learn how they problem solve. Because it's
right.
sort of like, oh, I could draw it like this instead of like that.
Yes.
And sure, I'm looking at somebody who's never used Clip Studio. I'm using my own tool set. One of my artistic heroes is Al Hirschfeld, the great American caricaturist,
Right.
right? And I remember still, as a child, seeing my first Al Hirschfeld book of the Gershwin brothers, and seeing that lyrical, sweeping line, and thinking, I want to draw lines like that.
Sure.
How do you draw lines like that? Well, I was too dumb to look up who Al Hirschfeld was, or anything like that. And I don't even know if the library had any books on that. It was long pre-internet. So I would draw and draw, and I finally said okay, brushes. Brushes give me a thick and thin. And I would practice with a brush pen. Decades later as an adult, I get to see Al Hirschfeld's work. You know, I saw his biography, The Lion King. I saw some of his work in a gallery, and it's like, he uses a nib. He uses a tiny dip nib, and he builds up these lines with thousands and thousands of lines, and he works really big. And I'm like, if I had tried that as a child, I would have quit.
Right.
Because I was no good with a nib. And I realize now in my grade 9 art, when we use nibs, and it was a nightmare as a left-handed, that the nibs were probably dead, like they lose their bounce, and B, we were trying to do calligraphy with a non-calligraphy nib, and C, my teacher probably didn't know what the hell she was talking about. It's high school art. And so
That's
I
so
was carrying
funny.
this resentment of nib pens for can get the bounce of a thick and thin.
So you still go back to
I decided to start doing my Sunday comics with a nib.
Interesting.
Because as much as I love computer art, working digitally, I mean, I was born to, I think in layers. I think that's how I am. I think of things.
Yeah, I know what you
draw
mean.
the foreground and then just wish I could slip the background in. It's like computers let me do that.
Right.
But I discovered that it's clean. It's too clean. You can't make them. It's hard to make a mistake on the computer because you have an infinite safety net. You can always undo.
Yeah.
You can always...
I like that. That's me.
Oh yeah, no. There's nothing. That's one of its great advantages, but there is also something so fulfilling about the tactile work.
Yeah.
And the happy accident,
a
where a line skips or blobs, or just has an organic feel that you can't fully emulate. And I've tried. And you can work a certain amount of jitter into a brush. Procreate has that too. A certain amount of randomness. And I enjoy doing that. I enjoy that because, I turn down stabilization on my brushes, because if I put a little in a line, I put it there because I want it there. I don't put it there because my hand is shaking.
Sure.
I put it there because I want it there, and I don't want the computer second guessing me and taking it out. And I think a mistake a lot of young artists use, because maybe it's not so much, it's not just artists, but it's people hiring young artists, perhaps, is they get seduced by the glossy prints. It's like the airbrush craze of the 80s. And everybody had plastic skin and everything was chrome pipe. And it's tiresome.
Yeah.
It's the imperfections that give it life, that give it a little more of that less of the uncanny valley.
Yeah.
And it's did you ever see the Mythbusters where they polish a turd?
I don't know if I saw that.
They took zoo animal poop
and they see if they could
made these like Chinese spheres. But the thing is, that's what it is. Is if you are a weak artist, on the computer you can hide a lot of defects.
Mm-hmm.
With
Mm-hmm.
big fonts and special effects and filters, and other artists will look at it kind of go, oh, they use this filter,
Right.
this
They know exactly what you did.
It's not good work.
Yeah.
But you have dazzled your client by polishing the turd, by using bright colors and glossy paper and big fonts.
Interesting. That's an interesting way to think about it.
I enjoy, maybe because I'm an old, I learned traditional. I'm not a strong painter as I would like, but I've gotten so facile with the computer that I can bang out an idea. You know?
Yeah.
I can go from idea to execution, boom, you know, so quickly. And there's that instant gratification for myself and I enjoy that reputation of being quick at what I do. But part of that is built up over the years because, you know, if I need to draw somebody playing a piano, I've already drawn the piano. I've already drawn the shopping cart. I can just pull it out of my own personal library. And it's that kind of problem solving for me there. But if I have to do that traditionally, okay, I will draw it, and then you have to sketch it, and then you clean up the sketch, and then you erase the lines, then you paint it, or you ink it, or you whatever, and you erase, and you varnish, and then you know. So having just that playtime of an inkwell and me with a brush, with a nib, I think too, they're as wonderful as sensitivity is. I mean, they're now at like 8,000 levels of sensitivity on the technology. As close as that is to approximating real life sensitivity with a brush or a pen, it's still not as superior as working with a brush or a pen. And I find that working with the traditional materials helps my digital and vice versa. You know, using more mediums helps the mediums you already know.
Now, I had a question for you. Just, you know, you had mentioned your setup, but do you said you work on Windows computers. Is there a reason you work on Windows as opposed to Mac?
Yeah, well, old is primarily the reason. When I was in college, Mac was brand new. They were the black and white Macs. You had Mac Draw, Mac Paint.
Mm-hmm.
Quark came on the scene a couple of years later. PageMaker,
Right,
the
right.
page layout. And any of the actual machines were proprietary. You know, it was a very small industry. And my first job out of college was working for a boutique in Toronto, and their clients, it was doing graphic design, doing computer graphics for businesses or for interior use. And our main client was IBM in Toronto, who were really pushing early touchscreen technology. So they had kind of a couple minutes of early computer video of like a flyby of the Toronto skyline or something like that. And they had a template of like a window and a couple buttons, and a lot of things I did was just sort of taking that template and redesigning the colors and the buttons, but for their demos. And they provided the software, which was a thing called IBM Storyboard Plus, and this was using DOS 3.0. So I was drawing with a mouse in EGA resolution, 64 colors. Effing old man. I say this like, oh yeah. And it was my boss was an incredible Scottish woman from who was very, very cutting edge in her thinking. She was into early CD technology, early video technology, and it was sort of her, me, and a programmer, and that was kind of it. Great first job, but it was Windows. It was IBM technology.
'Interesting.
PC, it was DOS.
Yeah. You see, you just
So
kind of you just
that's-
stayed where you wanted to stay.
That's
where you
I
were.
stayed. So it's like, and my wife had a compact DOS machine. My father-in-law was also an early adopter, and when she was in university, he had a computer tech connection or something. So he got her a little word processor thing, tiny little screen, 80 characters, green, amber, green
Yeah,
color.
right. I know.
If you left it on, you got that phosphor burn in. So she did all of her typing, all of her essays on this thing, and it was portable.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah. So when we got married, we got a 286 because it meant that I could occasionally bring work home. And then the Windows revolution happened, and I just kind of kept up with it.
So you just stayed. You just stayed in that world. There's nothing like I'm an anti-Mac person. It's nothing like that.
Yeah, no, and Macs were a thing, but it was you could upgrade piecemeal with a Windows, with a PC, whereas a Mac, you bought a Mac, and then years down the road you bought another Mac.
Sure.
Whereas I could buy a PC and in a couple of years buy a better graphics card.
Just keep right. Yeah.
So
that kind of makes sense because you're sort of a tinkerer. So
I've lost all those things, but I remember putting together machines, and it's like, okay, I've saved up the money. I'm gonna, which 17-inch monitor do I want? Which has got the best dot pitch for my needs? Which has got the best whiteness ratings for my needs? I'm buying a graphics card. I don't need 3D. I don't need a 3D processor. I need a 2D processor, and having to order, an ATI, whatever, and putting it together. So I've certainly lost a lot of that knowledge, but I'm not scared of it. I was never one to go right down to like, I need this brand of motherboard and I understand.
Right.
I put a lot of trust in computer people, but I sort of understood things. I was also very we upgraded to like a 486 or something, and I took it to the shop and I said, give me the case back. You're going to be a week. I want to paint this case. Because you had your choice of, black or industrial almond. And I thought, for a personal computer, this is not personal choices. And so I wood grained, because my desk was in the den and it was up against this wood banister, so I painted it like oak. I took it apart, I painted the cover like oak, they gave me back my machine, and it turns out I started having these problems, and it turned out that the motherboard was slightly too big for the case. And so the case was touching it, and occasionally it would sort of spark it out or something. And so I needed a new box. And I'm like, I spent a week painting this. This is like one of my personal computing choices. It said, well, we have one with a blue power button. I'm like, that's not a choice.
That's not a point, right?
I have a blue button on an ugly box.
That's so funny.
I'm so proud of that damn thing.
I remember when I was it might have been high school, possibly college, where a friend of mine entered the PC Computing Paint Your PC contest, and he asked me to paint his PC with this kind of cool thing. It's Penn Jillette of Penn and Teller.
Oh my God.
He used to write for PC Computing Magazine. That goes way back, and he judged that thing, and we won. We were like one of the people.
Amazing.
We won it.
Yeah,
so I know exactly what you mean. Like, trying to make a PC on your own.
I spray painted my brother's PC. He just wanted like a Galaxy. So it was just like, oh yeah, some black, some blues, some white stars. And,
yeah.
I mean, honestly, if either of us had been, remember they like airbrushing the sides of trucks and vans?
Right.
That could have been a career for PCs, right? That's the one thing I do not know how to airbrush, and if I did, I would have had summer jobs.
I was terrible at airbrushing. I can only do airbrushing in Photoshop today.
Yeah.
I know you have to get going. just for as a general statement for the stream, I may end the interview and then come back and do a drawing thing. So you may want to stick around. But in the meantime, what I want to do is I want to wrap up with you because I know you have another engagement. Tell people where everybody can find you. Not all your socials, all your streams, stuff like that.
Okay, I'm on Twitter at Lartist, and I'm on Twitch, twitch.tv/UncleLar. Friday nights beginning at 8. I will generally end between 10 and midnight, depending how my old bones.
How many hours do you go?
If I typically would go to midnight, and I just recently pulled that back a bit because just I need my sleep.
You're an old.
If I stay up, and the thing is, it's very easy for me to stay up till midnight because I get in that zone. I'm having fun with the chat room regulars. Yeah, we got a number of regulars. I have a couple who moderate for me.
That's
so
awesome.
It's a great little community there. So I'll go at least 2 hours, usually 4, just the once a week. Facebook, I'm Lars Ideas.
And we didn't even get into
stuff on Pinterest. If you got children, I have a Pinterest. Mostly I got a Pinterest because Google Image kept telling me I needed a Pinterest for references.
Right.
But then I've got a bunch of old random mashup cartoons there, but I also can put up coloring pages where I'll just do the line art of something and put it up there. So if you have kids, I got a bunch of Christmas things. I've got a lot of dinosaurs, pirates, and bears, space bears. I don't know why. So every so often somebody will say, "Can I get the line art of that?" And it's like, okay, I'll put it in the coloring pages.
Sure.
Download them.
And we didn't even talk about our connection to Steve Jackson Games. That you've created a lot of different art for Steve Jackson Games, including Munchkin and some other freestanding games.
Talking about brushes, I worked on the Scarf and Barf game, which involved state fair foods.
That's a Steve Jackson?
Waffle fries brush. Okay, I have a whole directory of just food brushes because I mean, here's sesame seeds to put on all the hamburgers I drew.
Wow.
Caramel corn. It was easier to make all of these line brushes than trying to draw a lot of waffles over each other.
Scarf and Barf is a SJ Games.
Yeah, it's one of the SJ. I think it was last summer.
Scarf and Barf.
I don't know. Yeah, it's I actually don't know the copy, but it's all weird foods in the Steve Jackson tradition.
Oh my gosh.
And weird rides. And sort of the rides have, I guess, a throw-up factor. Foods have a point factor.
Is that Sam? Is that Sam Mitchke, or who created that? Was it Steve?
No, it might have been Sam. Might have been Andrew.
Andrew.
I'm bad with the names.
Andrew.
I know Shelley.
Oh yeah, I know Shelley. Beautiful Shelley. Shelley Galley.
Shelley.
Say your Twitch channel again. I have someone in the chat room asking.
Okay,
It's
twitch.tv/UncleLar.
UNCALAR. Uncle Lar. Friday nights from 8 to possibly midnight.
Yeah,
and
Eastern time.
Yeah, so for the rest of the stream, we're going to wrap up this interview. I may be back, probably going to be back to do a quick little art thing for you guys here if you want to hang around. But Lars Ideas, thank you so much for being on. My first...
Nice to see your face, man. I mean... Yeah. Without conventions, how do we see our friends?
I don't know. How do we? We're coming out of it though. Very close.
Yeah.
We're coming out of it.
This too shall pass. It has begun to pass. And who knows if adventures will be a thing, but at least we're in the best timeline ever to be able to still be in touch on socials.
Yes, exactly. And by all means, everybody who's watching this live and also on VOD, make sure you go visit and see Lar everywhere you can find him because he's pretty amazing.
I suppose I should
Oh, go ahead.
Mention the 2 comics I do for a living.
Oh yeah, go there.
leasticouldddo.com and looking for group at lfg.co. Least I Could Do 7 days a week. LFG Mondays and Thursdays. It's a fantasy.
Amazing. It's amazing that you're able to. I was never able to get a webcomic going, but I really.
You need to get yourself. You need to get yourself a Somer.
I need. I need to get a lot of things.
He writes it. He's the business brain, and I am just blessed that we work well enough together that this has been a relationship for almost 20 years now.
Well, that's fantastic. I need a lot of things, Lar, to be honest with you. I'll tell you, I feel like I've done a lot of things wrong in my life, and I've done a lot of things right. But we'll, hopefully I'm not too old that things can't change around.
It's just a number. I only pull it out for comedic purposes.
Because I look like I can.
Pull it out to get out of lifting things. What?
That's good. I like that.
I can't hear you.
I
can't hear you. I'm sorry. What?
I am starting to use that. The hearing thing is starting to go. So I can't hear what you said. Lars deSouza, always in probably maybe about 10-15 minutes to do a little bit of art. But Lars, thank you so much. Hang out. I want to say goodbye to you while we end the stream. Thanks so much.